Do you push others away? Hi, I'm Anne-Margaret with this week's Sacred Sunday message to raise the vibration of your body, mind, and spirit. So, today is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. I know after my talk today, I'm going to head over to my dad's and give them a haircut and spend the day with them. But I wanted to come to you today because I thought about the father archetype, and I was reflecting on this beautiful archetype that we all have a father, whether they are in our life or not, whether we knew them or not, whether we're very close related or not. And I started thinking about how so closely this is related to our ability to have true intimacy in our life with our friends, with our work, with our partner, with our kids, with our purpose, with God, with Source, with all of those interrelated aspects of our life. And a lot of my clients that I work with one-on-one through my coaching practice, even my relationship couples that do relationship coaching with me, they really struggle with what I call the vicious cycle of loneliness. This is something that is the absolute antithesis of true deep connection, wonderful, juicy relatedness and intimacy. And we're going to go into that today just to learn what that looks like and to be able to recognize the signs if you are falling prey to that, because a lot of us, I would say every single one of us, struggles to a degree with this just feeling of being alone, because we come from oneness, we come through our mother, are physically attached to her, then separate into this separate existence of being human. And so oftentimes we really are attracted to being with other people, or being attracted to finding that close connection with our work or with our partner or with something, because we desire to return to that oneness. And so we'll look at that vicious cycle of loneliness. We'll be able to look at recognize the signs of it, and then also very simple tools to be able to alchemize that pattern so that we don't slide back into the destructive expression of it. So, guys, thanks so much for joining me. Let's dive right in, okay? So the behavioral pattern that comes with pushing people away is withdrawal. It's this desire to cut off from things, from others. Maybe it's a desire to cut off. You guys personalize this as you're watching this today, but maybe it's a desire to cut off even from your physical body. Like you're not even going to be related to your physical body anymore because it doesn't look or operate like you want it to. It could be your relationship with God, with Source. So any sort of withdrawal that you have, maybe it's into your relationship with work or your purpose, and you just kind of sacrifice that too. So figure out one thing you're going to work today with me around, something that you feel like you're withdrawing from. And I'm going to just keep it in the relationship setting of partnership and finding relatedness with that. But please apply it to your own area of life. So one of the traps, I would say the major trap that goes with this, is we all desire this sort of factory setting for that relationship. We kind of want to get it to a certain point. Like, this is the big delusion of our lives, guys, right? Being human is that change is the only guarantee. We know that we're going to die, that life is impermanent, and that we're never going to fully have complete security or arrive at this place. Life is a wave. It's a constant shifting where we're having to find a new balance based on life circumstances that are coming at us, or different relatednesses that we have with other people. So we're never going to have this factory setting that we just go, okay, I'm done, and then it starts cycling like that and we never have to worry about it again, okay? Your relationship should not be on factory setting. There has to be a conscious engagement in it. So let's look at how we can do that. But first, before we look into the techniques, I'd say, what are the patterns that keep us kind of desiring to go there? We have this desire for other people to behave the way that we want to have them behave, or have our work show up in the way that we want to, very predictable, so we feel confident we know how to relate to it. But whenever we kind of go onto that factory setting, wanting everything just to be smooth and consistent and predictable, we miss the pattern, we miss the excitement, we miss the juiciness that life has to offer. And we shy away from that adventurous aspect of our existence. and want to sacrifice all of that just for predictability so that we can feel safe and secure and have this false sense of predictability, which is just never going to happen. So the reality, we do have a fear of intimacy because the reality of intimacy is that it's messy. That adventure of life, it's messy, it's painful, it's exposing. Think about a personal relationship that you've got. Like when you go deeper into that relationship, it almost always comes from something challenging that you're going through together. Whether it be a financial struggle or a struggle with your kids, or there's a struggle with a family member, or circumstances, or this last year of what all of us have been through. Whenever we go through something, we have to go through it, right? The only way out is through. We can't avoid it or sidestep it. So the reality of intimacy, of any of our relationships, is that it can get really messy, and it can really hurt. It can be painful, and we can be exposed. So if we're going to be free in our relationship and really dive into the adventure of our relatedness as humans, we have to be somewhat okay with those three things, or at least learn how to surf those waves. So how do we do that? What if we looked at all of our relationships as an opportunity for our own growth? I know you guys hear me say this a lot, but this is such a key to liberating yourself from that victim mentality, focusing on what's going on that the other's doing that's annoying you, right? What the other's doing that's disappointing you, and keeping you in this perpetual state of suffering, of annoyance, of anger, of all these different things that we're perpetuating this really dysfunctional, self-victimizing behavior. So if we look at it like where all of our relationships are almost like training wheels on a bike. I like this example. I like this metaphor because, in expressing our needs to our partner or to our colleagues at work, or distinguishing what really are our needs or what versus our desires, like what really is a need versus a preference. But when we offer that, it's like putting training wheels on the relationship bike that you're riding in relationship to yourself. Meaning, if you want the other person to truly see you, you want the other person to be kind to you, you want the other person to respect you. Yes, they might be able to offer you that bridge from here to there and really hold your hand as you walk there. But we should only relate to it like training wheels until we can go on our own. If you do ride a bike, you probably learned with somebody holding the seat behind you and guiding you, or with training wheels on it until you felt like you could ride it yourself. Relationships, if we look at like a relationship as an opportunity to grow rather than pushing people away when things get tough, then we're developing a sense of autonomy within ourselves that really provides the foundation for true intimacy with others, with our work, with God, with nature, with whatever we're investing in a relatedness with. So that takes an immense amount of accountability, of a willingness to go, okay, this guy is triggering something in me, or this girl is, even a friendship, like this girl is triggering something in me, or this situation at work. How can I grow from this? How can I take accountability for how I'm responding to this? A true leader, and this is where we get into the archetype of the father, a true leader doesn't blame their followers and say, oh, they just didn't do things right. A true boss, a true CEO, or a true leader in a company never looks at the employees or the staff and says, what's wrong with them? They're not doing this right. They go, what's not in place? What could I put in place to help everybody succeed? What could I put into alignment to assure that everybody is stepping up in a way that works for the company, works for them, works for the overall success of everyone involved? So when I think about the father archetype, which is a very sticky archetype, I know, for us all, just because it's such a close relatedness. Our mother and father archetype are two of the most challenging archetypes in our life, based on that deep interrelatedness of us being children and learning our initial patterns with those people, whether they are in our lives or not. So let's look at the father archetype. The father archetype, if you guys can see it here, I'm putting it, there we go. The Father Archetype, the light attributes here are, that the Father is the protector, it's the initiator of life, it's the disciplinarian, it's the tribal leader and the guide, and also really the structure of development. It holds it's, the Father Archetype, whether it was your own father or another father figure in your life, really the protector of the structure for you to develop yourself in. A safety net, a provider of a home, a roof over your head, clothing, food, that kind of thing. And a shadow attribute of the Father we can look at is really dictatorial control, abuse of authority. Also, what's really important is abandonment. This is also a shadow aspect of the Father, because many times the fathers are not in the home anymore. It's really a definite dysfunctional aspect of our society, of our world, that this abandonment happens. And then it impacts so much of our intimate relatedness when we experience that leaving of the protector. So let's look at this. Like with the we don't need our Father to be in our lives to have that paternal energy within ourselves, or look to it in others. Maybe a very dear friend or a mentor, or another. Maybe it's your grandfather, right? So there are different aspects of that paternal energy that you can call forth and look for it somewhere else, and from someone else, if it wasn't in your own father. And what that does is, by becoming accountable or responsible for seeking out that paternal energy to feed your soul, to protect you, to guide you, to give you that structure for your own self-growth, your own safety, it really allows you to take responsibility to step into your own authority, your own leadership, and say in your relatedness, say, okay, well, if this isn't working, how can I shift this? How can I step into the leadership position in the relationship? Not to control them, but to take accountability to say, how can I clean up my side of the fence? All right, because usually we're kind of we're standing on the middle of the fence, or straddling it, pointing at the other side, going, they're not doing this right. And, maybe they upset us and we think, oh, you know what? I'm better off alone. I'm better off by myself. And so rather than when they do something that triggers us, and just pushing them away, can we say, okay, well, how am I learning from this? Remember the training wheels, that the relatedness, the relationships in our life are for our own self-growth, for our own development. Those training wheels over the bridge until we can be more autonomous and hold up our end, or grow in our own strength and groundedness. So let's look at the vicious cycle of loneliness now. So I kind of already pointed to it a little bit already, but what happens is we have this sort of mental pattern, this mantra. When something goes on and there's some sort of conflict in our relatedness, in our relationship, we want to avoid pain. We want to avoid pain. We don't really realize that pain is such a huge teacher. And remember what I said at the beginning of this talk, that intimacy is messy. It's painful and it's exposing. So our ego's involved, our sense of wanting to self-preserve the ego and not go into pain is there. So we have to kind of lean into that and say, rather than, I don't need this from my partner, I'm better off alone, or you know what, I don't need this, I'm not going to engage anymore, I'm just going to withdraw and do my own thing at work, I'm not going to, address what's going on and why things are getting kicked up within me. Rather than saying that, we can say something like, okay, well, what's this highlighting in me that's unhealed? What's this highlighting in me that really is setting me up to be vulnerable around this type of person? Because what we do when we're pushing other people away, and we have this really strong pattern of trying to create this fortress around ourselves, and the only people allowed into the fortress are people who say exactly what we want them to say, behave exactly the way that we want them to act, and then what happens? Because that's just absolutely impossible, we end up alone. We actually end up alone anyway. And it really comes from this delusion that being a human means we are alone. That's why we have the desire to connect with one another. Being a human means being alone. Nobody knows what it's like to be in your shoes. You will never know what it's like to be in someone else's fully, no matter how closely related you are. So that's something that if we accept, like our own mortality, that we're alone in this world, if we accept it, then we can start to work with that. But one of the main dysfunctions is our rejection of that reality of our human experience. Okay, that it's finite. We want to make best use of our time because life is short, life is finite, and also being human means being alone. So this is a full-time job, the work that we're doing with ourselves, and our relationships are our opportunity to grow. So when the cycle starts, and that vicious cycle that says, oh, I don't need this from this person, I'm better off alone, and push them away and focus on them rather than looking within, then we're creating even more loneliness in our lives. It's really quite a vicious cycle. So we're replacing that mantra with, what is this highlighting in me that's unhealed? The triggered emotion that usually comes with wanting to push people away is this feeling of separation anxiety, loneliness, abandonment, right? So we're kicking up those old feelings of abandonment that we experience even as a child, just the natural progression of coming into this world, separating from our mothers, leaving our homes, being on our own, being human, being alone. Okay, so we have this emotion of like, oh my God, I'm all alone. It's all on me. I'm separate. Nobody has my back. And then we kind of retreat into our corner even more so and push people away rather than leaning in. It's really an interesting dynamic, okay? So rather than that emotion of like, oh my gosh, I'm all alone and falling into this cycle of loneliness, we can say, okay, what if this opportunity that happened that's triggering me is an opportunity for my own self-growth? And then also, could we have a little excitement there? Could we have a little bit of optimism, saying like, this is an opportunity, this is a promise of freedom and true authenticity. So I'm on the right path, I'm right where I need to be, rather than I need to get out of here, I need to avoid pain, I need to avoid the mess, I need to avoid being exposed. Rather than doing that and retreating, leaning into it and saying, okay, well, how can I grow? Because when we have true intimacy in our lives, we have such a deep relatedness that lifts our heart, that fills our heart, that brings such joy to our lives. That's why we seek for it. So when we're pushing people away, we're just pushing away what we really want, just for the sake of avoiding pain, avoiding the messiness, avoiding looking bad or being exposed or being vulnerable. And usually the vicious cycle ends with, I'm out of here, right? You leave, you push them away, you quit the job, you give up, you resign what you really want to do. So when that voice comes up, like wanting to point the finger at somebody else and walk away, instead turn it back around. What does this have to do with me? How could I learn? Like, be the CEO of your life, like a good leader, a good father in your life, and say, how can I shift my reality? How can I express my needs more clearly? How can I stand up for what it is that I want and express my voice? How can I do that more so, rather than wanting that other person to walk on eggshells around me or behave the way I want them to be? How can I be more free and independent and autonomous? Okay, because other than that, we're going to be creating codependency in our lives and stunting our own growth. So when we hear that voice, what's my opportunity? When we're feeling this abandonment, anxiety of feeling all alone and betrayed and feeling like everything's on our shoulders, that atlas holding the weight of heavens on our shoulders, and replacing it with excitement. This is an opportunity for me to grow. I know that this is what I really want. I do want intimacy. I do want relatedness. I am willing to do the work that it takes to have that in my life, even if it means it's painful, it's messy, and even if I'm exposed, like, it's okay. That's what I want. I want to go dive into that so that I can really have that true relatedness. Okay, so now that you've seen that vicious cycle and you know it, next time it happens and you're wanting to withdraw, you'll hear it, you'll remember it, you'll recognize it. Now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. So when it arises in your life, you'll recognize it. Trust yourself. Now you may stumble over, like riding the bike for the first time, even on your training wheels, you might stumble getting up on the bike. But it's trusting that hand is under your seat as you're going forward, learning how to pedal fast enough and steer straight enough, being in alignment with yourself so that you can continue to move forward. You don't have to push others away in your life. Instead, right, they say keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer, right? Those people who drive you crazy, we just want to kind of flick them out of our lives like gnats, right? But if we can keep them close, we can learn so much more about ourselves, liberate our spirit, and be fiercely free and independent no matter what circumstance comes our way. We can be the driver in the driver's seat of our life, rather than being so dictated and influenced and pushed around by the world or other people's actions or behaviors. So stay strong, guys. Remember, your relationship goal is not to be leaning on each other with a codependency, but to be interdependent, like two pillars holding up a temple, right? Be super strong, the two of you, and when the other one needs the support, then we can be the training wheels to get over that bridge, but not to perpetuate the crutch just until we can stand on our own again. All right, if you need relationship coaching or any support, you guys reach out to me. All of our true, deep, intimate relationships are really a beautiful opportunity. They reflect back the false beliefs that we have about ourselves, our limited way of seeing ourselves, the world, and each other. So dig in, have a beautiful Father's Day, and step into that Father archetype yourself. How can you be your own protector, your own guide, your own leader, your own CEO, your tribal leader of your own life? All right, so I'm Anne-Margaret. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And remember, please feel free to share this video with anybody who needs it. And until next time, keep raising the vibration.